The hot sand of the arena burns her knees and palms. Constantinople bakes under a merciless summer sun. Her name is Helena. She is 23, noble-born, a daughter of the blue faction. For 2 hours, she has knelt here, iron shackles cutting into her wrists and ankles. Blood trickles down her forearms, dripping into the ancient, blood-soaked sand. She is naked but for a few torn rags, her back marked with fresh lash wounds. 50,000 voices roar from the stone seats rising around her. A wall of sound, screaming, laughing, placing bets. Behind her, a new sound cuts through the chaos. Heavy, clomping footsteps. A deep, snorting breath. The crowd's frenzy shifts, growing louder, more excited. She twists her head, just enough to see. Guards are leading a massive bull through the arena gates. The beast is a mountain of muscle and horn, over 1,000 pounds of raw power. They are driving it directly toward her. This is not an execution. This is what the Byzantines called entertainment. And if you watch until the end, you will discover the terrible truth of what happened when that bull reached her. Right now, Helena can only feel the heat, the pain, the terror. Her breathing is fast and shallow. Panic claws at her mind. She wants to run, but the chains hold her fast. She is positioned facing away, unable to see the beast, only hear it coming closer. And closer. The crowd begins a rhythmic, chanting roar. They are not chanting for her. They paid to see a spectacle, something that would be whispered about for years, a lesson for any woman who dared oppose the Green faction. Helena does not know that 3 other women have already died in this arena this week. She does not know that what is about to happen has been meticulously planned by men who are masters of destroying a person without killing them. She does not know she will survive this day, only to spend the rest of her short life wishing she had not. All she knows is that the bull is right behind her now. She can feel its hot, wet breath on her wounded back. And she begins to scream. Here is the history they never taught you. You know of the golden mosaics, the soaring dome of Hagia Sophia. You learned of emperors like Constantine and Justinian, and the preservation of Roman law. But you never learned that the Hippodrome of Constantinople was a slaughterhouse, where political enemies were torn apart before cheering crowds for over 1,000 years. You never heard of the systematic use of public humiliation and torture as tools of state control. And you certainly never discovered the specific methods the Byzantines used to break the women who threatened their political order. Tonight, you will learn why the Hippodrome was not just an arena for chariots, but a theater of calculated cruelty. You will see how the faction system turned citizens into participants in atrocity, and why the most brutal spectacles often targeted women. The reason this history has been sanitized reveals exactly how empires hide their darkest acts behind claims of civilization and Christianity. If you want to know the hidden truths that history tried to bury, hit that like button and subscribe. Stay with us, because what I will reveal about Helena and the bull will shock you. Comment below where you are watching from. Now, let us continue, for this story descends into much deeper darkness. The Hippodrome of Constantinople was unlike any Roman arena. It was something far more sinister. Built in the 3rd century and expanded by Emperor Constantine, it became the very heart of Byzantine political and social life. The structure was colossal, over 400 meters long, with stone seats rising to hold up to 100,000 souls. At one end sat the Kathisma, the imperial box, where the emperor himself would watch. The arena floor was covered in fine, expensive sand imported from Egypt. But surrounding it were corridors, holding cells, and, beneath it all, a hidden network of tunnels. This was not mere architecture for entertainment. It was infrastructure for state terror. To understand what happened here, you must understand the factions. Byzantine society was split between 2 groups, the Blues and the Greens. They began as simple chariot racing teams, but by the 5th and 6th centuries, they had mutated into something far more dangerous. They were political parties, religious sects, street gangs, and private armies, all rolled into one. Your faction was your identity for life. These factions controlled neighborhoods, ran protection rackets, and when their violence spilled into the streets, hundreds could die in a single night. The hippodrome was where this loyalty was most fiercely displayed. You sat with your faction, wore your colors, and cheered only for your chariots. Disloyalty could mean death. This system gave the emperors a powerful tool. They could play the factions against each other, promising favors to one while threatening the other, ensuring they never united against the throne. And when a political enemy needed to be destroyed publicly, the hippodrome provided the perfect stage, tens of thousands of witnesses, all primed for violence. Let me be clear. This was not some relic of a barbaric past. This was deliberate policy in a Christian empire that claimed moral superiority. Helena was a victim of this system. Born into a blue family, she was engaged to a blue official. But in the year 532 AD, tensions between the factions boiled over. Emperor Justinian had angered both the blues and the greens with heavy taxes and religious persecution. For the first time, the two rival factions united against him. The result was the Nika riots. And what happened in the hippodrome during those riots would become the single largest stadium massacre in human history. January 18, 532 AD. The hippodrome is packed. Chariot races are scheduled, but no one is watching. Instead, 50,000 blues and greens are chanting in unison, Nika! Nika! Meaning victory. They are not cheering for athletes. They are demanding Emperor Justinian's abdication. Justinian sits in the kathisma, listening to the unified roar of his people turning against him. He sends officials to negotiate, but the crowd shouts them down. Seeing his power crumbling, Justinian makes a decision that would define his reign with blood. He orders the imperial guards to seal every single gate. 50,000 people are trapped inside. The chanting stops, replaced by confusion, then fear, then pure panic. People rush the gates, only to find them locked and barred from the outside. They are prisoners in an arena with an emperor who has decided to solve his problem with absolute finality. Justinian summoned his best general, Belisarius. A military genius, Belisarius entered the hippodrome with 3,000 heavily armed soldiers. They formed a line across the arena floor and began to advance. The trapped civilians had nowhere to run. They were unarmed, unprepared. Some tried to scale the walls. Others jumped from the upper tiers to their deaths. The soldiers moved into the stands. What followed was not a battle. It was a systematic, hours-long slaughter. They moved row by row, stabbing and hacking, showing no mercy to men, women, or children. The sand turned to red mud. Bodies piled high in the aisles. By nightfall, 30,000 people were dead. The largest stadium massacre in history. Justinian had shattered the rebellion by massacring his own subjects. But the killing was not the only horror that day. As the soldiers worked, imperial officials moved through the stands, identifying specific targets, faction leaders, wealthy supporters, political enemies. These people were not killed outright. They were dragged to the arena floor, saved for a special fate. Among them were women. Wives and daughters of opposition leaders, guilty of nothing but their family name. What happened to these women in the following days shows how the Byzantines used gender-specific humiliation as a weapon of political terror. Remember this detail. It is crucial to Helena's story. 73 women from noble families were arrested. They were held in the chambers beneath the hippodrome for 3 days, starved, and degraded. On the 4th day, they were brought into the arena one by one. A smaller, loyalist crowd of 10,000 had been assembled to watch. These women, who days before had worn silk and gold, were now paraded in rags. Their hair had been hacked off. They were beaten and bruised. Forced to walk the entire 400-meter circuit, they were pelted with rotten food and stones, their every stumble met with jeers. After the procession, they were made to kneel in the center, their crimes of association and disloyalty read aloud, before being sentenced to exile and the seizure of all their property. The message was clear: step out of line, and you will lose everything: your status, your dignity, your very identity in front of the entire city. This pattern repeated throughout Byzantine history. Empress Theodora, Justinian's wife, who had risen from the lowest ranks of society, used the hippodrome to take vengeance on noble women who had once scorned her. She had them stripped, shorn, and paraded before the crowds, ensuring they met her gaze from the imperial box as they passed. She used the arena to erase her rivals, proving that no one was beyond her reach. The hippodrome was also the stage for other brutal rituals. The Byzantines perfected public blinding as a political tool. A heated bronze rod would be applied to the eyes, the sizzle of flesh echoing in a suddenly silent arena. It was a punishment designed to remove a rival without killing them, leaving them as a walking, suffering warning to all. Another method was the chariot. Rebels would be tied to the back of a chariot and dragged around the track, their bodies torn apart on the sand and stone over 400 meters of agony. These spectacles were rare, reserved for the gravest crimes, and the hippodrome would be packed to capacity. The empire wanted everyone to see. So why did ordinary people, citizens of a Christian empire, participate in this? The psychology is complex. Faction loyalty meant you cheered when your rivals suffered. Fear kept you in line, you knew you could be next. Religious justification painted the emperor's enemies as enemies of God. And for a population with little entertainment, this was the ultimate, gruesome show. But there were limits. Some methods were so extreme they were used sparingly. Methods that involved psychological terror more than physical pain. Methods designed to break the spirit utterly. And this brings us back to Helena, chained on all fours, the bull looming behind her. You have waited for the truth. Here it is. Helena was not being executed. The bull was not there to gore her. The guards controlled it with ropes and prods. They positioned the massive animal directly behind her, letting her feel its heat, its weight, its terrifying presence. The goal was pure, unadulterated terror. For agonizing minutes, they let the fear consume her. They let her imagination conjure a fate worse than any quick death. The crowd screamed and bet on when she would break. And break she did. Sobbing, shaking, reduced to a state of primal fear before 50,000 witnesses. Finally, they led the bull away. Helena collapsed, utterly destroyed, without a single physical wound from the beast. She was released the next day into exile and died 2 years later, her spirit shattered. The spectacle had achieved its purpose. A message was sent to every woman in Constantinople: this is what happens when you defy the order. The ruins of the hippodrome still stand in modern Istanbul. Most tourists walk there, unaware that the very stones beneath their feet witnessed 1,000 years of calculated cruelty. The Byzantines were not barbarians, they were a sophisticated, Christian civilization. And they chose this. They refined a system of terror to control their population. We learn 3 things from this. First, civilization does not prevent atrocity, it often provides better tools to commit it. Second, public participation in violence can be cultivated through fear, tribalism, and permission from authority. Third, the most effective terror targets a person's dignity, destroying them socially so they must live with their humiliation every day. Helena, the women of the Nika riots, the blinded emperors, the dragged rebels, they were more than footnotes. They were people. Their suffering was real. By remembering their stories, we honor them. We also arm ourselves with the truth. We learn to recognize the patterns of power, to resist the crowd's roar, and to refuse to let history be sanitized. If you believe these hidden victims deserve to be remembered, subscribe to this channel now. Share this video. Leave a comment telling me which part of this history shocked you the most. These are not just stories from the past. They are warnings for the future. The stones of the hippodrome have not forgotten. And now, neither have we.